Disruption often follows an S curve. EVs have shown promise for an S curve, but one user had a question for us. Daniel wanted to know, is it possible that we're in a point where it's not an S curve, where it's flattened out? We're going to go ahead and discuss that. I'm Brian. Welcome to my Tesla Weekend. So joining me is Herbert from Brighter. Go over there, get brighter with Herbert. I always do. Daniel sent us a tweet specifically to Herbert and I. We agreed it was worth discussing. Okay, so video idea. People are starting to doubt the inevitability of EVs, thinking that OEMs will be able to game it out for a decade with hybrids and ICE sales. Let's take a look and ask, is it an S-curve? I mean, first of all, do you think that sales are flattening?
No, absolutely not. If you look at the statistics that you're seeing from just everywhere, the sales are skyrocketing everywhere. I think there's this sense that the US sales have fallen because you're following the legacy automakers and what their electric vehicle sales have done. And they have definitely not only flattened, they're just plummeting down because nobody wants to buy those electric vehicles. But if you look at the US sales of the US in 2023, it was at 9%. And the expectation for 2024, 13%. So is that slower sales than you expected, or is that exactly where we thought it was? Then if you look at the surveys of electric vehicle of consumers who are looking to buy a car, 50% of them in the US have said that they're going to buy an electric vehicle. The funny thing is, it's actually 49% said that they'll buy an electric vehicle and 51% they wouldn't. And guess what the CNBC and all the mass media, multimedia would talk about, right? They're going to talk about the 51% who don't want to buy an electric vehicle. It's like, dude, 49% are going to buy
Most
one.
people.
Okay, so there is no slowing down of this. The question is, the legacy automakers, you got to make sure that they're not able to provide it, not able to deliver what they want to do. So now this Daniel tweet is fantastic because it's exactly what the conversations we're having today, right? We're just debating this, which is, okay, what's going to happen now? We know for sure these legacy auto, the mass media, what they're going to do is they're going to hammer home the fact that there's not enough chargers for the electric vehicles out there. Be careful with range. It's not quite ready yet. Wait for the superchargers to roll out. In the meantime, hybrids is the best solution. And I've got some thoughts. I could tell you now what's going to end up actually happening, but they're going to put up a great fight on this.
I will agree with you. Toyota especially is doing their best to make as compelling a hybrid as possible to give them a leg to stand on when they ask for more time. But it is still an ask, and it is still just time. So the 49% desire rate is a fun one to me, because if you look at it, there was a tweet by, I don't remember, one of the usual doubters on X, who said, oh, look, the demand is still so soft. To which James Stevenson, at I cannot underscore enough, said, yes, but if you look back year by year, it's growing very quickly. The number of people saying, I will buy an EV is growing, to which I pointed out, and it is growing faster than the supply can keep up with. Right now, there's something like 4 times as many, 5 times as many people who want an EV as who own an EV. And that's very encouraging. But if we look at the country by country numbers, even if we look at the global numbers, the curve isn't quite an S anymore. It is not increasing in pace. And I believe there's a reason for that. And I believe the reason is the supply chain just can't keep up. Building a new big battery factory, 2, 3, is a lot easier than building, well, now this year we need to build 6 or 8. And it's going to take some time to make that transition to be able to build the capacity to electrify as quickly as some might like, is what I'm thinking there. Now, in terms of desire, what one thing do you think could really increase adoption, say, sometime after mid-25?
This is a trick question.
It is.
I mean, yeah, the number one decision that a consumer makes when buying a very high cost asset like a vehicle, right, next to a home, you're talking $50,000, is price. Price. And we are now at price parity with gas cars. What happens when we fall and cheaper? Do you think that somebody will go, I love I love my gas car so much, I'm willing to pay $10,000 more? the reason why some early adopters started buying electric vehicles when it was still more expensive than ICE cars is because it's there's so many advantages. This isn't just a different drivetrain. There are considerable advantages that overweigh the concerns of range, which is the number two reason people don't want to buy an electric vehicle yet, right? It's price and range. Price is going to be solved very quickly. I mean, we are at parity now, and I've seen some forecasts, and we're talking in the U.S. We're going to break through that price, equity with gas cars by 2024, 2025, and then but in China and in they're already there. In China, they're already cheaper. And so I mentioned to you in the previous show that in China, 40% of all new cars sold is an electric vehicle today. And that's because they have supply. They have so many Chinese car companies that are out there building electric vehicles. The projection is that by June of this year, like less than a few months, just a few months from now, it's going to be 50% of all cars sold will be electric vehicles. What happens when that happens? And the reason why is because they're able to offer lower priced cars versus here in the US, we don't have a compact car available yet. And so it's like you're still the high price points. And so it's hard to decide that based on price.
So I've got a couple thoughts here. We are still in the US, at least in the carrot phase of the carrot and stick, where you
Hmm.
will get
Hmm.
a nice little benefit if you buy an electric car. In the future, it won't be that, because you can't, when everyone's buying one, you can't give everyone benefits. There's no one left to pay for the benefits. But look at it today. In a presentation I gave to the Oregon Electric Vehicles Association, we talked about what's going to happen when the $25,000 car comes into existence. If there are still state and federal incentives, that 25,000,
Oh
forget the
God.
10,000 you're going to save in gas, just in incentives. If you're in
Yeah.
Colorado, all of a sudden that car is half price. It's 12 grand. You can't buy a used car for 12 grand, let alone a new one.
Wow.
So you take your 10,000 in gas savings, that gets you down to 15. You put another 7,500 on it for your federal. I mean, you're down at $7,500. It is at that point impossible to consider buying anything else. It doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
unlike gas cars, electric cars still have room for
Yeah.
cost improvements. An
Yeah.
internal combustion engine is very complicated. It has a lot of moving parts, all of them precisely machined, milled, assembled by, I exaggerate not, 100 different people. Each workstation in the Ford plant has a worker who puts in one, maybe two pieces. That's it. And there are just a gazillion stations just to build the motor. Electric motors, you've seen them being built. They're done by robots. It's done very quickly and simply. The motors are getting cheaper. The magnets within them are getting cheaper. All of the pieces are getting cheaper, and it's so much simpler that it is not unreasonable to assume that a car that you build today would just be $10,000 cheaper to build in 5 years. What is that going to do to margins, to adoption, to customer satisfaction? I mean, it's a lot to think about. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm going to add on to that thought, which is I do think that we should not just dismiss what's going to happen. What will happen this year is these legacy automakers are going to come out strong and putting a lot of FUD and disinformation. They're going to advertise this like crazy. They're going to say hybrid's the right thing. Don't buy these electric vehicles. It's not quite ready. And they will be able to convince a lot of people that electric vehicles is not. And so this is a war. We need to come out there and fight back, just like we did in 2018, 19, and 20. We need to get out there and really communicate the truth out there. So they might slow it down a little bit. I'm not saying that they can't because they have money and they have the ability to advertise and they have the ability to sway public opinion. And so that could happen. But like you just said, as prices fall, and so my thing too, though, remember that we're only in the U.S. 9% of all cars sold is electric vehicle. It's going to be 13%. It'll be then 20%. So even if this, a huge chunk of people are still convinced inappropriately for a couple of years, it doesn't really impact that because it's like there's still going to be a tremendous growth potential. We're still at the beginning stages. So
So thing that I think is holding back global adoption, and this may sound counterintuitive, is explosive growth in China. China makes most of the world's EV batteries, and China has strict mandates looming. And I believe that a disproportionate percentage of batteries are being routed to China rather than other markets where they could be used. Now, these companies are building factories elsewhere in North America, in Europe. And as those come online, it'll be something to definitely keep an eye on because it will bring prices down, it'll bring availability up, and all of that is a win. The other thing to remember, and I always hear people saying, well, Japan is hesitant because they don't want to be beholden to China. And that sounds great, except that batteries
Yeah.
don't have to come from China. They can come from Japan. They already do. Panasonic is one of the world's leading battery makers. They can come from Korea in LG or Samsung. They can come from the US. But the bigger thing is chemistry. I had a chance to talk with a battery expert at CES, and I got to ask him tough questions, and he was very excited to talk to somebody at CES who had good questions. But one of them was, in the next 10 years, how many new chemistries are we
Mm,
likely to see come online in batteries? And he said, at most, three.
mhm,
And I think that's a great number. That's a lot.
mhm,
And I said,
mhm,
is sodium really close to being there? And he said, for
mhm,
automotive, probably not, but it doesn't matter
mhm,
because there's always applications. If you need low density, great. Put the sodium ion batteries in the stationary storage, take the LFPs they're using now, put those
mhm.
in cars. And the cars that are
Gotcha.
getting LFPs now, you can move those to high nickel. And it just adding more items to the buffet. You don't have to add more meat necessarily to the end of the buffet. Get some more potatoes in there and everybody's going to be happy because different things for different use cases. In this case, potatoes. I think I got that part right. So I'm going to say that in terms of the S curve, I think the numbers are deceptively low. I think they're artificially constrained by the biggest obstacle being batteries, and not by a lack of demand, not by a lack of price reductions. They just got to get more battery factories built, and battery factories take time to come online. And if Tesla has taught us anything, it's that the 4680 form factor is a bit bedeviling in terms of getting it scaled and effective. Uh,
Mhm.
any closing thoughts on that?
I love what you just said. It's exactly correct. That's a great analysis. I think that at the end of the day, I can't think of another example, right? When a revolutionary step change, new technology comes in and ends up killing the incumbents, that somehow the incumbents were able to stop its growth, they will thrash and do all sorts of things like you're hearing now, and so people are concerned. But at the end of the day, it will fail, and you just can't stop something that is 20 times better than the current technology. So.
It's got a lot of built-in benefits. Instant torque. We didn't build this to be fast. We didn't build it to be a race car. We built it to be a good car. But because it's electric, it's got the instant torque. It's got the incredible power. It's got the quietness. These are all byproducts of a system that's just electric. So it's going to be silly to look back in a few years and think of
Yeah.
the
Well, the big
notion.
one,
Yeah,
and I know you've mentioned already, is the regulations like Canada and California and China and Europe and just you go on and on and on. They've all put in regulations at this point. So, I mean, I don't know how you get around that. And I think the way that you might get around it is they're going to lobby and make sure that hybrids is part of that. So hybrids is part of the IRA. Hybrids is going to be, you know, is going to be able to be considered to be an electric vehicle, and so that could be the way that they do that. And then it becomes BEV versus hybrid. And I think it was you that told me that there's a good explanation of why hybrid just won't be able to compete with the electric vehicle in cost and weight, in performance. You're just Frankensteining some product that just won't make it.
it doesn't make sense. For those who love the Ford Lightning Super Mega Frunk, how can you tell me that a hybrid with no frunk is somehow better all of a sudden? It's
Mhm.
almost like these talking points don't need to make sense as long as it equals Tesla bad. So, guys, in the comments. What did we miss? What did we misunderstand? All that good stuff. Leave it. Brighter with Herbert, check him out. He is a good friend and an amazing resource. Thank you so much for joining us. For everybody else, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the next one.